Welcome everybody back to America's Finest Sports. Today we're going to be doing a little MLB trade deadline, rumor, prediction episode like that, talking about all the stuff that's currently going along in the deadline. So the first really big thing is definitely going to be Mr. Juan Soto. So me and Chase talked about it earlier today, so I'm not going to say too much about it. We talked about it on Friar Talk. But Isaac, you haven't talked about it in a while. So what are you feeling right now with Juan Soto? Not only with the Padres, but with the MLB in general. Are you feeling like the Padres are the clear frontrunner? That was kind of reported today. Are you feeling like there's other teams that are like big time suitors? I think that the Cardinals are definitely big time suitors. I think the Padres are up there. But what do you kind of think right now about Juan Soto being traded, and where do you think he could land?
I kind of take those front runner kind of tweets, reports with a grain of salt, just because we all know what happened with the Padres last year. I mean, it's definitely a traumatizing thing, but I really do think it's kind of different this year, whereas the Padres are actually like a contender for Juan Soto, whereas last year, like I knew they were a contender for Max Scherzer, but I didn't really feel confident that they would get Max Scherzer. This year just feels different because they got the prospect capital. They got that's their biggest need by far, and I think I wouldn't say the most desperate, but I think they are one of the most desperate teams in baseball when it comes to the trade deadline. I expect them to be very aggressive considering what happened last year. I do not think they want. I think everyone knows they do not want a repeat of what happened last year. I think this team's a little set up a little better than it was last year. Whereas I think I said it a few days ago. Last year, before the collapse started, you were starting to lose guys. You were starting to get a decline in performance. Whereas at this deadline, I expect to get guys back such as Fernando Tatis, and I mean, conflicting reports about Drew Pomeranz, but hopefully some other relievers will be back, and then we'll be gaining pieces through the trade deadline. So I think it is a little different. On top of that, this pitching staff is really good. But in terms of just Juan Soto in general, I don't know who the front runner is. I don't want to declare one, but I think the Padres, Dodgers, and Cardinals are the most likely, with the Mariners being like a dark horse. Mariners might be a little surprising, but I do think the Mariners are one of those teams that might jump in because they had a fat winning streak and they're right there. They're right there in contending. So I think they're going to be a team that might jump in. But there's this damn fly that keeps bugging me. I'm sorry, but I think they're going to be contenders. But in terms of who has to give the most, I really do think the Padres have the most to give, and it wouldn't make sense. I've seen people include guys like Jake Cronenworth and guys that are expected to be up there like very soon or are already in the MLB. I don't think it would make sense for the Nationals, considering I mean they're not close to contending. It makes more sense for them to get like a Jackson Merrill, Harlan Suzana, those kind of guys, because they're very young, and I think they fit the Nationals time frame more than any of the, a guy like, of course CJ Abrams is going to have to go, but a guy like Jake Cronenworth. I don't care if Trent Grisham goes, but Trent Grisham or Mackenzie Gore, I think the younger guys fit their time frame more. So I do think the Padres have the most to give, but at the same time, they might want to spread those resources out to multiple areas, filling multiple needs rather than that one need that they're trying to fill in. Whereas teams like the Dodgers do not care. I'm sure the Cardinals don't care either. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Padres do. Are they front runners? I wouldn't say there's a clear-cut front runner, but it's going to be exciting to see what they do. And I really do expect the Padres to go all in for Juan Soto.
Ryan, where are you at on the whole situation with Juan Soto?
There you go. I was waiting for that. Yeah. So honestly, looking at it, we've obviously had a lot of time to look at all the contenders for Juan Soto and think about who really has the best pieces in terms of what the Nationals want. And honestly, I am willing to say that I think the Padres are the front runners there. Not only do I think that they are going to be the most aggressive, with us not necessarily needing starting pitching as much as the Cardinals and maybe even the Dodgers, but like like Isaac said, the Nationals are a really long way from contending if they trade Juan Soto. They're going to be underwater with some bad contracts for a while. Their best player after this deadline is probably going to be like Alcides Escobar or something like that. And I mean, if you're looking at it that way, you can include guys like Dylan Carlson, Nolan Gorman, Gavin Lux, Dustin May. Like, you can talk about guys like that going to Washington, but in reality, that just doesn't really make sense for what they're going to be doing. They're going to be completely tearing it down, selling off to a brand new owner who's going to have to build that franchise back up from bottom, like completely from scratch. So when it comes to that, I think the Padres definitely have the most to offer. They're coming off of a really good draft where they got two guys that could probably go into the top 100 by this offseason in Lesko and Snelling. And, you got guys like CJ Abrams who could go. He doesn't really have a spot on the team, and, he's a former top 10 prospect. Mackenzie Gore is down, but that doesn't really seem to be much of an issue because in an article from Jeff Passan and ESPN Plus a couple days ago, he talked about guys like James Wood, Jackson Merrill, Yarlene Susanna. These are guys who are a lot younger, but there's some teams that are viewing these guys as top 100, and in the case of Wood and Merrill, top 25 prospects, which is just completely ridiculous. And if you look at James Wood in comparison to guys like Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn and other top prospects that could potentially go for Soto, he's easily got the best numbers. And, all the peripherals look good. He doesn't have a strikeout problem. In fact, his recognition of the strike zone is pretty much elite for someone his age. And, a mix of physical tools and numbers, he's probably the best prospect that the Nationals are looking at right now. So, all things considered, I think the Padres definitely have the best package to offer. And one thing that's not even being brought up is, do the Dodgers and do the Cardinals want to trade guys like Carlson, Gorman, Lux, Dustin May, who are already important contributors to their big league club? The Padres don't really have anyone of that magnitude that they're looking to trade in a Juan Soto deal. But these are the guys that are like being talked about as the key pieces for the Cardinals and the Dodgers. So all things considered, I think the Padres definitely can be seen as the front runner here.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense too when we look at it and we see all the guys that have been named for the Padres. I think one of the biggest things, like when it came out that Juan Soto's on the market, for me was, the initial thoughts of, you're gonna have to take on a Corbin contract, a Strasburg contract, right? That's not the case. That's not the case. So I think that changes it a lot, just because the Padres wouldn't have been able to do that. And if that was going to kind of be the leverage on a trade where the team like the Yankees or the Mets or the Dodgers, right? And the Mets would be weird, but a team like that'd be willing to take that salary, they would have a serious advantage because they could also give up some of the prospects, maybe less prospects, and then be able to pull that deal. But it doesn't seem like that's what the Nationals are after either. Over a lot of reports, we just want to trade. We just want to trade only Juan Soto. We want to send him out. We want to have a deal, and we want to get as much possible for him, which I think makes more sense for them, just because if you're the Nationals, you're going to suck. You're going to be tanking for a couple of years. Eat those contracts and call it an L on those. But it's not like it's going to be hurting your contention window. Like, it's not. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them, if they are going to trade him, to not package a guy with that. And we're talking about the prospect capital that the Padres have offered, and it is really significant. That's the thing. One of these guys is bound to be probably an all-star caliber player. I would expect that. Wood is definitely one that gets brought up a lot. CJ, Hassel, right? They're probably not all going to be great, all the guys that go there, but one or two of them is probably going to be really, really good.